Welcome to the worst sports channel on YouTube, Hot Garbage Sports, with me, Coach Ryan D. Forbes has released the list of the most valuable sports franchises and teams in the world. And on this channel, we talk hockey. So we are going to talk about all 32 NHL teams. How much are they worth? Because it's always exciting stuff. Why are they worth that much? We're going to find out where your favorite team ranks. And spoiler alert, a team finally cracks the $2 billion mark. Revenues are up. Money is up. What will that mean to the salary cap? I don't know, but we're just going to talk about team worths right now. And it's always fun to watch billionaires get richer, right? Not really, but it's super interesting to see where your team ranks. We're going to go through the list. First, I'm going to show you all 32 teams and what their value is so you can find your team on this list. You let me know down below in the comments. Are you surprised? Do you agree with it? Does it make sense? Once we go through all 32 teams, I'm going to walk you through a couple big key teams that I think are, well, either undervalued or not valued the right way. And if you want to know, what does old Coach Ryan D here know about money? Lots. That's my degree. I actually have a day job and it involves business, money management. I have a good background in accounting and finance as well too. Enough that I can talk intelligently enough about this, but not enough that I can give you proper financial advice. So without further ado, let's get to the list. Are you ready? I'm ready. So starting at number 32 on the list, it's the Arizona Coyotes, $400 million Arizona Coyotes. They're up 67% in value. The team that is near bankruptcy multiple times, doesn't have an arena next year, and can't pay their bills on time. Ooh. They are at $400 million. Hey, and if you're new to Hot Garbage Sports and you love the best in NHL content, subscribe, smash, join us. We cover the NHL as a whole. We cover some of your favorite teams here as a whole, and we have the best in hockey knowledge coaches breakdown and videos like this where we talk about NHL financials. And if you want to know where these valuations are coming from, it's really simple. They're really just taking the revenue and timesing it by 5. They used to do it by 2, then by 3. They're saying it's now worth 5. And the interesting thing about sports teams is these evaluations, they're totally relative. And we're going to talk about it when we talk about your favorite teams. But owners don't really always have the chance to buy these types of teams. So when their favorite team goes for sale, they're just like kids. They're like us buying hockey cards in the store or favorite jersey. There's only a limited supply of so many things out there in terms of rare items like hockey cards with jerseys or autographed jerseys like I have behind me. So you're willing to pay more because they're rare and maybe it's your only chance to get a hold of it. Plus there's an ego thing for billionaires. So they're timesing it by 5, but these values, they're always going to be janky because valuation is in the eye of the beholder. And more importantly, the eye of the buyer. And I doubt any of us are going to be able to buy these. Back to the list. So we have the Coyotes at 32. Next up, we have the Florida Panthers at number 31. They're climbing out of the hole. They have a 5-year change. They've gone up 91%. That's not surprising. They're starting to get fans in the stands. They're putting a good product on the ice. Florida, as good of a team as they're in, you might be a little angry about this, but Florida needs to win in the first round and win a few Stanley Cups before this valuation goes out. So they're second last on the list at 31. Next up, we have the Columbus Blue Jackets coming in at number 30. That's not a surprise to me either. $475 million. Not a ton of success, not a huge market down in Columbus, but nonetheless up 94% in the last 5 years. Things are going up. Number 29 is the Buffalo Sabres. Buffalo is an interesting market because it is a hockey market. It's a cold market. They have, the NFL and some other competition there over, but people love the Sabres. The problem is the Sabres have gone down in terms of, I think, where their max value could be. So they're up 30% in a year. They're up 67% in 5. So they're making money. Crazy, I know, right? But they would be even higher if they found success. I mean, it has been a long time for Sabres fans. They'll tell you that, but still crazy to think profitable, even after the Eichel shenanigans. And coming in at number 28, an NHL team supposedly located in Canada. All right, number 27 is the Carolina Hurricanes. The Carolina Hurricanes come in at $550 million. These guys have a cup. they're up 139%. So things are growing well in Carolina. Carolina was actually recently just sold, and Tom Dundon, the new owner of it, paid a good amount for this team. And the recent sale of the Pittsburgh Penguins and the Carolina Hurricanes actually inspired the valuations on this list, because the Forbes needs to go back and take a look at what was most recently bought and then compare percentages and say, okay, well, if Carolina sold at 3.9% above yearly revenues, which is what they did way back a couple years ago when they sold, let's go ahead and baseline the NHL like that. It's a fair methodology to do. Pittsburgh just sold for 5. That's why we're at 5 now. So a recently sold team in the Canes. Number 26 is my Winnipeg Jets, owned by Mark Chipman and David Thompson, the richest man in Canada. Onto the banner, True North Sports and Entertainment, $575 million, Jets fans, up 69%. The interesting thing about the Jets here is that they have captured likely 80-85% of their market as avid Jets fans. Manitoba and Saskatchewan are just that small. It is just over 2.5 million people between both provinces. And as much as I love Saskatchewan, when you're not located really close to the Jets, you don't maybe not feel like they're your real home team. Sure, they're the closest, but tons of people in Saskatchewan cheer for other teams in the NHL. Predominantly, though, it is Winnipeg, just not to the same level of Winnipeg, Manitoba. Winnipeg has a population of about 750 to 800,000 in the surrounding area. Winnipeg is one of the smallest catchment areas, if not the smallest catchment area in the NHL. I know there's cities smaller than Winnipeg, but their surrounding area is so large. Winnipeg just doesn't do what Toronto or the Twin Cities and that does, where it has a whole bunch of growth right outside the city named something different. It's just Winnipeg and a couple little small towns on the outside. The Preds, in one of the loudest buildings in the NHL, come in at $600 million, up 122%. So they've had success over the years. They built a really stable franchise. Nashville is doing well. The Anaheim Ducks, $620 million. Hockey continues to grow in California. It's slowed down a bit, but 50% over the last 5 years. The Ducks are in the middle of a rebuild, and I think when they find more success, and they're about to soon under Drysdale and Zegras, I think the Ducks are going to end up going up next year. No surprise here. Number 23 is the San Jose Sharks at $625 million. Just like their cousins, the Ducks, their time for success came and went, but they're doing much better this year than previously thought. The success of California hockey teams has been well documented in the last 20 years, both on and off the ice. Here's one that may surprise some people. I think our first shock of the list, the Avs. The Avs are only $630 million. Denver is an amazing sports town. Denver is cold. There's a lot of hockey that's played in Denver. This one shocks me. Stanley Kroenke ends up owning this team. I mean, what does this guy not own? He owns Arsenal, if you didn't know, and was part of that shenanigans with the Super League. Go check my video above if you want to know what the European Super League is. He also owns the LA Rams, and because you can't build statues to yourself these days because kings and queens in America don't exist, Kroenke would definitely be one of those, though. He ended up building himself a $5 billion stadium in Inglewood, in California to house his LA Rams. So this is really just an afterthought for him at the end of the day. Sorry, Avs fans, but you're the child that Stan necessarily has to feed, but I don't know if he cares. St. Louis Blues, $640 million. Speaking of Stan Kroenke, who took the St. Louis Rams away from St. Louis back to LA. Oh, dagger in the heart to anybody St. Louis. Tom Stillman comes in with $640 million, up 106%. A lot of that revenue has to be tied to the fact that they have found success in the last 7 years, plus a cup. The Tampa Bay Lightning, oh boy, what will a dynasty do for them? Tampa Bay used to be down near where Florida was in terms of, their valuation and that in the league. But over the last 5 years, they found massive amounts of success. They've had 2 Stanley Cups, multiple Stanley Cup runs, some of the best players in the NHL, talent among talent, and sold out buildings nightly. So they go ahead and jump up 113%. Tampa Bay is the 20th most worthwhile team in the NHL. Minnesota Wild, here's another surprise for me after Colorado. The Wild only come in at $675 million. The Twin Cities boast a population area between St. Paul, Minneapolis, and the surrounding burbs of anywhere between 2 to 4 million people. Officially checking in at 3.65 million. This is a large hockey market. This is a cold hockey market. This is our close cousins to here in Winnipeg and a great rivalry between the Jets. It's a booming hockey market that never should have lost the North Stars, but the Wild are looking strong. First place in Central Division. I actually expected them to be worth a lot more than this, but hey, they're up 70%. The Calgary Flames. Okay. This one's my first question, $680 million, and you're going to have to wait till the top 10 to find out why this is such a big question. They're up 66%, finding a lot of success in the Pacific. The Vegas Golden Knights, $710 million. Wow. I mean, for that expansion fee that they ended up paying of $500 million, they're already worth more than that at $710 million. With multiple Stanley Cup runs, trips to the final, some of the best players in the NHL, this is definitely paying back big money for Bill Foley and the Maloof family. I mean, this has just been an unbelievable story for Vegas. I can see this actually becoming a top 10 NHL franchise pretty shortly. Dallas Stars are way up at $720 million. They don't love hockey in Texas. That's wrong. There's a lot of hockey being played in the southern United States as we get better at building indoor rinks. Kids, players, teenagers all over, men and women are playing hockey in droves in the southern US, and it is driven a lot by the NHL expansion years ago when the North Stars ended up moving down to Dallas. So Minnesota got their team back. Thank goodness. They didn't deserve to lose them, but Dallas definitely did, does, and will always have an NHL team, and I don't suspect that Houston is far behind. New Jersey Devils, anytime you play in the New York, New Jersey area, you're going to be worth a lot of money. Up 142% right now. It doesn't matter what success you do or do not find in New York markets, you are going to be worth a lot. You want a piece of that northeastern cash. The Vancouver Canucks, lots of head offices and logistics and technology markets over there in Vancouver with a ton of fans. So there is money, there is population, it's Canadian, there are head offices, there's everything you want to support a major sports team here. And the Canucks are the only major sports team in Vancouver. They don't have an MLB team. They no longer have an NBA team, clearly no NFL team. So the Canucks are all alone capturing that entire market when it comes to pro sports to the tune of $825 million. I think this is too low. I think these guys are worth over $1 billion. They're only up 18%. Imagine what would happen if the Canucks got back to where they were at years ago under the Sedins. This would easily go over $1 billion. Vancouver's just a hot, awesome hockey market. And their rivals from across the pond, $875 million for the Seattle Kraken. They paid $650 million in order to expand into the league. The Kraken are going to be worth a lot of money. It's insane to think that they're actually worth more than the Vegas Golden Knights already. But I said it when Seattle came in. Seattle's a hockey market. It's going to be a hockey market. This area is going to succeed. They just got to find some talent on the ice. Pittsburgh Penguins, they're worth exactly what they sold for, $900 million. Pittsburgh ended up getting sold for $900 million just recently. This ended up bumping up all of the valuations on this list. And we all know they're owned by Super Mario, partially anyway. They're up 58%. Pittsburgh is a hockey city. Pittsburgh is a sports town. Pittsburgh, the city of champions. The Steelers, the Penguins, always in contention. And I guess they have the Pirates, but I can't remember if they're good. I don't think so. I think they pay their entire team less than a pitcher. Oh well. Washington Capitals, $930 million, coming close to that $1 billion mark. Number 11, up 62%. This makes sense with all the success and the help of Alexander Ovechkin here in Washington. This is a booming hockey market. It's only going to get bigger. What did I tell you about teams from New York? New York's in the basement this year. They made a very good 2 back-to-back conference final runs in the last 2 years. The NHL Stanley Cup playoffs, they're valued at $950 million. I actually think this is a little undervaluing for the New York Islanders, but I expect them to remain always in the top 10. And when they do find success again, and they will, Islanders fans, it's just a tough year. Not only will they crack $1 billion, but they have the potential to be in the top 5. This is just a booming hockey market. You can't get enough hockey in New York. You can't get enough sports in New York. It's just how populated it is. Hockey Town, USA, the Detroit Red Wings encroaching on $1 billion as well too, up 58%. Stevie Y is back under the helm, and after the dynasty that he built in Tampa Bay, I expect another Detroit Red Wings dynasty like the late 90s, early 2000s to resurge under Yzerman. We see the potential of that today. This team will always remain in the top 10 in my opinion, because even when they have terrible runs of success, which they have really in the last 7-8 years, Detroit is always hockey crazy. I mean, you really can't expect them to cheer for the Lions, can you? Yikes. The LA Kings, the team that Gretzky built. Yes, I know the Oilers were there, but the LA Kings would not be the LA Kings without Wayne Gretzky. The Kings come in at over $1 billion. That's that LA money for you, being in the big city, not Anaheim, not San Jose. LA and those celebrities and the amount of revenue that drives through that building, plus a couple cups in the last decade, has really helped make this one of the best franchises in the NHL. They can go in and out of the top 10, but that population of LA will really sustain them for a very long time. Here's the first massive change. The Edmonton Oilers come into the top 10. Mind blown. Oilers fans are like, of course we're in the top 10. We're the Edmonton Oilers. They were closer to Calgary before. They got a market correction because Forbes basically said, well, the last time we did this list, we kind of missed some of the revenue they're making. So we added that revenue back, and then we went ahead and realized they're worth $1.1 billion. This is where we're going to talk about Calgary after we get through the list. But the Oilers, this makes a lot of sense for me. There's nothing else to do in Edmonton but work, make a lot of money, and watch the Oilers. Hey, I'm saying that from Winnipeg because Winnipeg and Edmonton are the two most frigid, difficult places to play in the National Hockey League. It's dark, it's cold, it's punishing, but the fans are the best. They love their hockey. They are true, passionate Canadian hockey fans. It's frozen 6 months of the year. This franchise is rocking, and McDavid is to thank. The Philadelphia Flyers, $1.2 billion. Philly, if Pittsburgh's the city of champions, Philly is the city of money. Pittsburgh ends up putting a lot of money into their teams, but the rivals, Philadelphia from Pennsylvania here, always seem to have, whether it's in basketball, whether it's in hockey, the little bit better team. Same with baseball. So Philadelphia is a massive sports city, and you can't forget about the Eagles. The Steelers may have a lot of Super Bowls, but the Eagles, most recently. It's all original six from here. The Boston Bruins, $1.3 billion. Makes sense. Anything in the upper northeast, whether it's Boston or New York, are going to be worth a lot of money. And the Bruins have had perennial success in the last 20 years of the NHL. Captained by Patrice Bergeron in the perfection line. They're fighting for a playoff spot now. They're heading towards a rebuild, but they are worth a lot of money. The Chicago Blackhawks, the city that is in between LA and New York, third largest city in America, comes in at $1.4 billion, led by multiple Stanley Cup wins in the last decade. The Blackhawks, their original six team, they got the best uniforms in the league. The Red Hawks uniforms are my favorite. The Blackhawks come in at $1.4 billion. The Montreal Canadiens, $1.6 billion, number 3. Sorry, Habs fans, you are not number 1. That does not mean you don't have the largest or most passionate amount of fans in the NHL. It is debatable whether you do or don't, but you are number 3 on the list. You are up 43%, $1.6 billion, driven by a rabid hockey market in Montreal, and arguably one of the most famous NHL teams. And we say one of the most famous because your arch rivals, the Toronto Maple Leafs, are number 2 at $1.8 billion, up 64%. Is it the Leafs or the Habs? You guys let me know down below in the comments. Who's got the more rabid fan base? Who is actually worth more? It will be a rivalry forever. So Toronto comes in at $1.8 billion, leaving us for number 1, New York. New York, it's a hell of a town. It's the New York Rangers. Of course, it's the New York Rangers. It's always going to be the New York Rangers. I'm sorry, Leafs fans. Leafs Nation is massive. It's the largest fan base in the NHL. I do believe it's bigger than Montreal. You use things like Google searches and that to figure out who's got the bigger fan base. There's a lot of different methodologies. Maybe we'll do a video about that later. Let me know down below in the comments if you want me to do a video on who has the most rabid fan base. We'll take a look at some metrics and analytics for that. But New York, the population is so staggeringly large. What else can you say? You only need to capture 6% of the New York market in order to be richer than rich, and the Rangers have done that. They play out of Madison Square Garden. Arguably, no, it's not arguably, it is the most famous arena in the world, in my opinion, and I love the fact that they have never sold out and changed the name to something else. It'll always be Madison Square Garden. It's not Little Caesars Place or Budweiser this. Sick of advertisers taking names. New York does it right. The Rangers are just a famous franchise, and they are moving into success with their new young core. So the Rangers, only places to go are up. There you have it. That's our list. And here's a couple thoughts I have on the list. Number 1, the Rangers being first makes sense, but it is very hard to debate the fact that Toronto and Montreal may be worth way more than they are. The thing that will never happen is we will never have the Habs, the Leafs, and the Rangers for sale, 100% of it, Parts of it can be for sale, but we will never see those three companies for sale where a private billionaire can come in and buy them. But there are people out there that have enough money that would be willing to buy these franchises for literally whatever it would cost because they are their childhood favorites. And that's what happened back when Forbes used to do this list. I don't know, I say 2010 when the Dodgers ended up selling. When the Dodgers ended up selling, Forbes had the valuation list really low. And then all of a sudden the Dodgers sold. Forbes went, oh boy, we screwed up. We looked at this as a business case in terms of, hey, it's worth this much because you make this much money. Whatever revenue you make, one-time sales, that's a fair evaluation for a business. You make $100 million, you're worth $100 million. Then they went, well, there's something more to be gained in this, so we're going to bump it up by 2 times. And then the Dodgers sold. And when the Dodgers sold for $4 billion, which was way over the Forbes valuation, I think Forbes had them at like $800 million at that point, they went, we forgot to include the fact that the LA Dodgers are absolutely a famous team in the MLB, and they could be the owner's favorite team. And that's exactly what the owner says. What opportunity do you ever have to buy the Dodgers? I'm going to pay anything it takes because it's not like the Dodgers are going to come for sale ever again because he owns them and he's not going to let them go. So then all of a sudden everybody's valuations went up because when you buy teams like the Leafs, the Habs, or the Rangers, if a billionaire has a chance at them, they may end up paying $3 billion, $5 billion, $10 billion. I know it sounds crazy, $10 billion, but it's worth whatever the billionaire is willing to pay. And those three franchises, they're so freaking famous and they have so much history that they could just be worth way more than whatever's on this list. When it comes to sports, people are rarely pragmatic. The other thing to know about this list, this doesn't include all the revenue. So teams do this special thing where the arena deal, if a team owns it, say like True North in sports and entertainment, they own the Canada Life Center, their building, but they also own the Winnipeg Jets. These are separate entities. That means the Jets rent and lease space from the MTS Center, which is also owned by True North Sports and Entertainment. So when they're owned together and they're separate, they don't actually get included together. And Forbes ended up saying that they included the fact that teams have new arenas or new deals, but they didn't include the real estate value into these prices. We all know Madison Square Garden, who owns Madison Square Garden Sports and the Garden themselves. The Garden is worth a lot of money, like a lot. It's not included in the valuation of the Rangers, but it's just the way business works. It's not really fair to the general guy because, like, you know, if I own a car, I can't say like, hey, my wife owns that car, I own this car, we're not together, we're not married, that's not separate. Account it differently. It doesn't work for us, but it sure works for businesses. So I digress. These are just the valuations of buying the team. So if you bought the New York Rangers, the Montreal Canadiens, the Toronto Maple Leafs, the Winnipeg Jets, or whoever you want to buy, you're just buying the team and the brand. You're not buying the arena and anything else that comes with it, unless that's part of the deal, but it would be a separate deal. So hopefully that helps you make sense of this list and why the valuations are at where they're at. Now, let's talk about another few teams. We just talked about the Leafs and the Habs there. Let's talk about the Flames. If the Oilers are worth $1.1 billion, I think the Flames are worth right near that. If not, maybe even a little bit more. And this has nothing to do with fan bases liking their teams more or less. It just has to do with the fact that Edmonton and Calgary have very similar sized cities, very similar demographics in terms of money that comes in. They're both big oil towns. One has head offices. One is more blue collar in that sense. We could generalize all we want. But at the end of the day, I do think the Flames are the most massively undervalued team on this list. I think they are. I also think that when Houston enters the league, whether that's Arizona moving to Houston or as an expansion team or whatever it is, they will automatically be worth $800 to $1 billion because Houston is just such a large city. What happened with Seattle and Vegas skyrocketing up the list, this will happen with Houston. Those are my takes. Subscribe, join the channel. Let me know what you think down below. This has been Coach Ryan D with Hot Garbage Sports.